And now to the latest on this week's major story, the Golden State Killer case. For a third and final day, survivors and family members of victims face confessed Golden State Killer and East Area rapist Joseph DeAngelo to give impact statements ahead of tomorrow's sentencing.
My dad lay at the front door, bleeding to death. My dad died saving my life that night, and he's my hero.
You no longer live in the shadows. We all know who you are.
What sickens and angers me the most is that DeAngelo was able to live a normal life with his family.
As you just heard, today took a very different tone, dedicated to families of the 13 murder victims, and they've felt this loss for decades. But for the first time today, we are hearing from DeAngelo's ex-wife and the mother of his children. Take a look. This is just part of Sharon Huddle's statement. The defendant's criminal actions have had a devastating and pervasive effect on my life and my family, she says. I will never be the same person. She goes on to say, I now live every day with the knowledge of how he attacked and severely damaged hundreds of innocent people's lives and murdered 13 innocent people who were loved and have now been missed for 40 years or more. Huddle also said she hopes her statement doesn't take away from those of the victims, but not everyone is happy with her. One daughter of a murder victim talked to us directly about this.
I thought it was incredibly inappropriate for Sharon Huddle to speak publicly this week. This is our week. As far as I'm concerned, she's complicit. And you have to imagine that it takes a special kind of woman to step into the light right now when we're in the middle of giving our statements, and we've lived with this for decades, and she felt like this was her time. I'm sorry, I'm not interested.
Jennifer Carroll's father, Lyman Smith, was murdered in Ventura County. One woman who spoke in court today, the daughter of Sherry Domingo, who was killed alongside her boyfriend, Gregory Sanchez, in Santa Barbara. They were brutally killed in their home. Sherry was also raped. Gregory Sanchez actually fought back against Joseph DeAngelo, but was eventually murdered. Debbie Domingo McMullen has been vocal about her mom's death, and today she got the chance to speak directly to DeAngelo. We talked to her afterwards.
You know, I have a feeling that I mean, I know she would be proud that you know, everyone has brought us to this moment. I don't know. I miss her so much, and I know that she knows that I loved her. Oh, very much so. I feel very gratified. I feel victorious in the battle over good and evil.
Debbie traveled from Texas to be here to give her statement. Now, today's statements were again much different than yesterday. Families were able to share pictures of their murdered loved ones. For them, it's not closure, they say. It's the beginning of their healing process to see DeAngelo sentenced to life in prison tomorrow. And new at 6:30, with 3 days of impact statements finished, we look ahead to Friday's sentencing. Joining us now to talk a little bit more about what to expect tomorrow, current defense attorney, former prosecutor Mike Wise from the Wise Law Group. Thanks for being with us, Mike.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So victims usually get to testify against their attackers in a normal court proceeding, but not in this case. So how are these victim impact statements even more important for survivors and their families?
Well, they're critically important for the victims of crime because in a traditional case that went to trial, they would have had a chance to testify at the preliminary hearing, the jury trial, and then finally thereafter at the sentencing hearing. Two of those opportunities are essentially taken away because there is no jury trial and there is no preliminary hearing. So this is their one and only opportunity to talk to Mr. DeAngelo and let him and the court and the world know what he did to them.
And again, we know this has an effect on so many people involved, but does it have an effect? Does it impact DeAngelo's sentence at all?
It depends on the case. In this particular case, it won't, because this is a stipulated or agreed upon sentence between all the parties. And I understand a lot of the victims were consulted in reaching this agreement. There was some discussion on that point today. The fact that he has agreed to take a life without parole sentence instead of pursuing the death penalty is an agreement by all the parties. So in the end, the sentence by the judge will most likely be life without parole. The statements themselves won't have an impact on the sentence.
Understood. Now, tomorrow, everyone's saying it's the grand finale, the sentencing. What should we expect to happen at Sac State?
I think what you're going to see tomorrow is each of the district attorneys from the respective counties are going to essentially summarize their cases, maybe explain why they agreed to go with a resolution for life without parole rather than pursue the death penalty. Judge Bowman, who is a fantastic judge and experienced litigator in his own right, will provide some statement, some discussion of the case, and then he will then go ahead and impose the judgment and sentence of the court.
Yeah, and a lot of people are wondering what is going to happen next to DeAngelo. COVID-19 obviously playing a role in this sentencing. Do we have any idea of where he will be sent to prison?
He can be housed at any of the institutions that are qualified to hold life prisoners. He'll be a level 4 prisoner in the Department of Corrections. Because of COVID, the Department of Corrections is not accepting any inmates at this time. Traditionally, he would have been held 4 to 6 weeks and then got on the big bus to prison and went to a reception center. But because of COVID, he is probably going to stay in the jail where he is currently residing, possibly for up to a year.
Wow. All right. Mike Wise, thank you so much for joining us tonight to give us more
Truly my
context.
pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. A context and depth to this ever-long case. And again, tomorrow it all comes to an end. And keep in mind, you can watch the sentencing live on the ABC 10 app, also on abc10.com tomorrow.